Hi guys, my name is Yuli and welcome to Nerd Alert, where we talk about everything nerdy. For today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks, and this is going to be basically a series, a review slash talk slash ramble, because I have low-key planned it, but I don't have like an actual script for it, so I'm just going to be talking about why I love this series and why you should read it if you're hesitating. And I've left the books on this side because I can't really hold them for a long time together, so that's where they're gonna be. And hopefully you can see them. I put the fifth book with the first two just because I can't fit it on the shelf, so that's the reason. So I started reading the Lightbringer series in November of 2019, and I binge read the first 4.5 books in November, and in the beginning of December I read some of them. I listened to most of them on audiobooks, and I love the audiobooks so much. The narrator has done an amazing job with them, and I really enjoyed listening to them and reading them on the occasions that I could actually read them and stuff, because at the time I was kind of busy, so that's why I was using mostly the audiobooks. And at one point I put down the fifth book because I just wasn't feeling like it and left it until I was in the mood for it to pick it up again, and I finally finished it at the end of May. So that's my intro. So today I'm going to just talk about it and why I love it so much and all of that. And also I just wanted to say that I've heard things that the series is sexist, or that people consider it sexist. While there are some things that could be considered slightly offensive, I don't think that the series is sexist. If anything, some of the most powerful characters are the female ones. So I actually love it pretty much. In the first 2 or 3 books there are some sexual remarks and stuff, and a bit of sexualization towards women, but I don't think that that's like a reason to dislike the whole series. That's just my opinion, of course, but I just feel like, given where that's coming from, it's from some of the characters who are basically kids. So it's like boys, like teenage boys. I kind of feel like it's kind of a given, but at the same time, some of them come from men, but most of the time those men are low-key the bad guys. So I just don't know how to explain, but I just didn't see it as sexist. So I guess it depends on how sensitive you are and what your personal understanding of that term is. So that's my opinion on that matter. But anyway, I just wanted to talk about it because I took such a long time to read the series because I heard it was sexist, so I just imagined like the worst possible case. And when I actually started reading it, I just got annoyed because there was obviously nothing that bothered me personally in it, and just I wanted to say that and make it clear. But anyway, I really loved this series from the very beginning. I just loved it so much. It has all of the things that I really love. Good characters who develop throughout every single book, good plot that's basically not always the same thing. Like it has one story, but each book has its own plot that works with the main plot as well, and it just drives the book forward. But the characters are also doing their own thing, and there's so many characters with their own stories, with their own goals, with their own personalities, and all of them are very well written, and I just really enjoyed reading that series. And one of my favorite things about it are the twists, because these books have so many twists in each of the books. All of the books have at least one plot twist. Even the first one, there was a plot twist in the middle of the book that just blew me away because I didn't expect it. There was like, I'm pretty sure that there was a plot twist at the end as well. There were so many plot twists in the second book, in the third book. I don't honestly remember that much from them anymore because I read like 70 books since I read those, but I just really enjoyed them. And yeah, so First, I will start with something that really annoyed me, and then I'm going to keep talking about this what I love. So the only thing that I actually really dislike is the choice of points of views, because in the beginning, in the first book, we have mostly Kip's point of view, with Gavin's point of view, maybe Kairos and Liv, but they're all written in third person. And then in the second book, we get introduced to a character called Gunna, and his point of view is written in the present tense and in the first person, and that's what I really didn't like it, and it kind of took me out of the story. And on top of that, there is like another character who gets his own point of view later on in the books, and it's written the same way Gunner's point of view is written. So, but they're mostly flashbacks. So then Gunner's point of view is in the present, and then that other character's point of view is in the past, but they're both written in the present tense. And at first I thought that maybe that present tense was serving some kind of, I don't know, some kind of a role, but it kind of isn't. So I don't know why that choice was made to have a point of view written in the present tense and in the first person. I really don't like it. I just am not a fan of mixed points of view. Like, I would much rather have all of them written in third person, or all of them written in the first person, even though I don't like that either. Just give me multiple points of views written in the third person, or just stick to what you've started as, instead of changing it in like the next book or in the middle of the series. That's something that I really don't like. But aside from that, I love the books. I also forgot to say that I'm not going to actually summarize what the books are about, because I'm very bad at it, and I just always make it sound like it's a lot more boring than it actually is. But all of the books and my reviews are going to be linked down below. I actually have a summarized post on the Nerd Alert blog, which I'm going to link down in the description, and there are going to be links to all of the reviews for all of the books on that post, which is a lot easier to find than linking all 5 of them from Goodreads. Anyway, the plot is very well done. I find it very interesting, and as I said, there are so many twists in it that it never gets boring, in my opinion, personally. Now, I don't think that the books necessarily should be binge read. It depends on you. But from what I noticed from me personally binge reading them was that I really got tired of a few characters by the time I got to book 5, because I just got really annoyed with a few of them, and those were basically Kairos, Gavin, and Tia. I'm going to talk about them at the end. But yeah, I just really got annoyed with those 3 characters, and I felt like in the last book, Kip's point of view was the most interesting one. This was when I was reading it back in November. I just cared more about Kip than anybody else. I didn't care about what others were doing, because Kip's storyline was way more interesting, because he was actually doing stuff relevant to the plot, in my opinion. Now, when I started reading the book again in May, I started from where I had stopped in November, and I again was listening to the audiobook, and I loved every second of it. I wasn't annoyed by the characters, I didn't hate the characters, I didn't think they were irrelevant, and I think that this was because I had read 4 books about all of these characters back to back, and I hadn't really had a break from them. And I think I noticed something similar with a few other people who incidentally were reading the series at the same time I was reading it, and I think that they also stopped at one point because of reasons of their own, but I feel like it's because of the binge reading that happened. Because I've noticed the same thing happening with the Wheel of Time. I can't read more than 3 books in a row, because I get really annoyed with the characters, and I just start hating the books themselves because of the characters. And I thought that this was just a Wheel of Time thing, but it kind of happened with the Lightbringer series. I do like the Lightbringer a lot more than the Wheel of Time, but that's a topic for another video. So yeah, I just think that you should space out the books, and this way you won't really get tired or annoyed with the characters as much as I did, because of how fast I basically read them. But anyway, so as I said, the plot, I just really love the story, because it also features a very unique magic system and world. While the world is kind of like the typical high fantasy world, in this one it's more like a, what is it called? I think it's called a flintlock fantasy, when you also have guns. Not sure though, so I'll correct myself if I was wrong. But yeah, there are guns in this in the books, which I don't usually mind. I'm not the biggest fan of flintlock fantasy, to be honest, because I prefer swords and sorcery. But that's just my own preference, and I actually really enjoyed this one here, because even though they do have guns, they don't really use them that often, because after all, guns aren't that helpful against magic, especially the kind of magic they have. And the magic system in this book is very interesting, and I actually love it, because they have different colors, and those different colors have different abilities, and the people who can draft those colors can have like one color, two colors, or multiple colors, and then they're basically called a polychrome if they can draft more than one or two colors. Not sure if it was just more than one or more than two colors. I think it was like more than two, and that's when they're polychromes. And the polychromes are actually very important because they're rare and they're very priced, so yeah. But anyway, what I love about the series is probably the characters, to be honest, because they just have so much growth, and also the magic system because of the colors and stuff. Because the only other book that I've read whose magic system had to do with colors was Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson, and I really love that book as well. But I don't know which one of the two magic systems I love more, because both of them are kind of very different, and I just love them both for different reasons. So yeah, I really love Kip. He's the main character, and he's the first introduced character anyway. So he just grew very much. He grew on me, but he also grew very much as a character, because he came literally from the bottom. He was a nobody, and he was basically a bastard. So all that, he had all that and nothing else, and on top of that he is also overweight, so he had to just basically deal with all of the mocking of people. He had to deal with him being a bastard and being thrust into a world that he doesn't really know much about and all of that, and he just grew so much. I don't really remember that much from the first book, but he was, as I said, he was thrust into this world that he didn't know anything about, and he learned how to draft and like use his powers. He fought in the first book without having much like training, and he was good at it. And then in the second book, which is basically the training arc, he just grew even more. He got the respect of his friends, and he just became respected. He got stronger, and unfortunately he had to do most of it on his own, and even his grandfather was kind of like not really helping him much. Like his family wasn't really helping him much. Gavin, who is his father, wasn't really doing much himself either, because he didn't really know how to deal with it, and he wasn't really aware, like, because Gavin himself, I'm going to talk about him a bit later, he also had his own problems and his own things to get through. So basically Kip, even though Kip now had a family, he still was kind of like left on his own, and that's when his friends come in, because that's who helped him. His friends were basically the reason for his development and growth and just being who he ended up being in the last book. And I loved his character journey so much. I just really loved that, and I'm just so glad I read those books to see that character growth, because he literally didn't believe in himself in the beginning, and he struggled with so many things from the very beginning, because of people's prejudice, because of his own prejudice and insecurities about himself, because of his grandfather being basically a terrible person to him, because of his father just not behaving like a father, and because of this woman he saw as a mother figure, and who kind of like didn't really return that, or didn't want to return that, and all of that. I just really loved that. And on top of that, he had his own other problem. his own problems to deal with in the school in the second book, and then everything else that happened after that. I don't really remember that much from the first 4 books anymore, which is funny. But yeah, I just think that Kip has some of one of the best character arcs that I've read about in a long time, and I just didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did, because in the beginning when I started reading I was a bit hesitant about his character, but as I said, later on I really enjoyed it. I am now going to talk about Tia, just because she was the character that I really hated at one point, just because of how well she's written. Tia has a complicated story. She basically started out as a slave. Slavery, I think, is a big thing in that series, and it took her a long time. I don't remember much about how she got out of that, but it took her a long time to kind of accomplish that. And then it was very complicated, because as I said, she's a very well written character, and that's why she annoyed me, because she just preserved that mentality from the time she was a slave throughout the whole series. For a very long time she was struggling with that, and because of it she got herself in other situations that were in a similar dynamic, and I really hated that for a very long time. But at the same time I really understood why she did what she did, why things happened the way they happened. I did understand it, and that's why I didn't like it, because I couldn't understand it. She's just a very realistically written character in my own opinion, and she's very flawed, and that's what I really didn't like. I'm not saying that the other characters aren't flawed,
God knows they are,
but she was just a character that I really liked because of how strong she is and how much she develops as well, and how much she grows. But at the same time she would always do the same mistake over and over again, or at least that's how it felt to me, and that's why I really didn't like it, and that's why I just didn't want to read about her. And that's why I stopped reading the last book, because in the first half it was getting so much and I just didn't want to deal with her, basically. But she ended up growing on me again in the second half of the book. The last book, I mean, she developed a lot more and did her thing. So I'm trying to make this spoiler free, so that's why I'm being so vague, and it's kind of hard to talk about it, but I'm doing my best, okay? So yeah, that's basically Tia. I don't really have that much to say about her, just because all of her actions are basically a spoiler, but she has her strong sides, she has her weak sides, and she's very annoying for a very long time because of her past as a slave. And I just, as I said, I warmed up to her. Eventually, it was a hard thing to do, but I don't really regret it. She is a very good character, she's very well written, and I really appreciate her for what she is. Guile is Kip's father, and also the Black Prison for the majority of the series. And he is a very interesting and conflicted character, because he has done a lot of questionable things, but to compensate for that he's also done a lot of good things. So you never know if he's a good character or a bad character, or just a very morally greyish character. And I really like him because of how complex his story arc is, of how complex his personality is, and because of everything that he's done for the country, but also for himself as well, and for the people he cares about. I really loved that whole character arc. I really hated his character arc in the third book, and from then on I just found it very annoying, to be honest. I really loved him in the first and second book, but after that I just really hated him. And honestly, he's just a guy who gets everything handed to him, basically, for most of the part. It's kind of annoying, to be honest. Even though I enjoyed the way the last book ended, I know that many people would actually hate what actually happened in the last book, and I can understand that a lot. I don't necessarily like it, to be honest. That's why I gave it 4 stars, because of how it wrapped up and how Gavin's character kind of was concluded. I don't even know how to say it. I just don't really like his the end of his story. I just feel like it didn't really have many consequences, to be honest. So that's what I really don't like. And the same goes for Iron Fist. He did something really bad in the last book, and I feel like he got nothing. Like, he didn't get any consequences for it except for like a guilty conscience, and I really hated that. Like, I really did. I should have probably rated that book a bit lower, but I really loved it. Iron Fist is the leader of the Blackguard, and the Blackguard is made of the people who are supposed to be the bodyguards of the Black Prison, because the Black Prison needs a bodyguard. But anyway, Andros, who is Kip's grandfather and Gavin's father, he is a very interesting character, to say the least. I really didn't like him in the beginning, but I think around the third book I started understanding his character a lot more, and therefore I began liking him and respecting him a bit more than I did before, because it was kind of revealed that he was actually doing all of those questionable things because of his like overall goal. He had a goal and he was willing to do anything and everything to get there. He does everything he does for what he believes is good, and that's what I really love about his character. Now, I don't really like him that much necessarily, but I really appreciate his character because I saw that he was just doing everything for the good of his country or whatever else he believed in, and that is very important for him because he is just a lot. He's a very complex character, and he's also a very flawed character, and he is, I don't even know if he's morally grey or just very like, I don't even know how to explain it, because all of that he's done is very bad from like so many perspectives, but at the same time it has its like good sides. I don't even know how to explain it. Like, his character is certainly not like the best, morally speaking, but he's a very well written one as well. So that's why he's a character that I love to hate and I hate to love at the same time, because he's just a very controversial person. I don't even know how to express myself, but he's a character I like, and I don't like the fact that I like him, but I do. That's the thing. That's all I'm gonna say. I could talk about Kairos, but I don't really know what to say about her. She's a very interesting character. I don't really care much about her. It's not because she's a bad character. She's a very powerful and good character. It's just that it's kind of weird. I feel like in the beginning of the book, of the series, she had like this shell or this persona, and then it slowly broke, or maybe we slowly started seeing the real Kairos. I don't know, but I feel like she was very different in the beginning, and now and at the end she was like almost completely different person. That's how I read it, and I don't really know how to explain this. I don't really dislike her. I don't like her. I liked her story though, and she's certainly again a very complex character, and she has her own things that she's done. Now, one character that I really didn't care for was Liv. And she was basically in the first book, she was a bit in the second book, and then she completely disappeared until the last book. I thought that her chapters for the most part were kind of unnecessary and irrelevant for most of the story, because she was basically, if all of the characters were here, she was there, and she was kind of like my hands right now. So that's why I didn't really care about her. She did have a row at the end of the series, and I really didn't like her. I don't even remember what happened to her, to be honest, but I couldn't care less about her, and I feel like in the time that we had her chapters, we should have probably had Corvin's chapters instead, because his story seemed way more interesting than hers, and I would have loved to see his story develop way more than hers, because he's just been through so much, and he's had such, just his whole story was so sad. Like, everything about his character was so sad that I wanted to read more about him and understand it and see why everything that bad happened to him and stuff, and not read about his daughter, because she was very boring and irrelevant for the majority of the series, while he was one of the most important characters for the main characters. So that's what I wish had been like switched in a way. So yeah, because he didn't have his point of view at all, in like never, he didn't even have one sentence from his like perspective. So that's what I would have liked a lot better than reading about his daughter. Now, when it comes to the ending of the series, I'm not going to spoil it. I've done my best not to really spoil it. I was talking mostly about the characters because that's what I usually notice in books. So yeah, but something that I noticed was that the ending wouldn't be everybody's taste. Now, I personally liked it. I didn't love it just because I've learned to appreciate it when books end in a bit different way than this one ended. But I do love it because it just reminds me of the ending of an anime, and I just love that. It's a good ending. It's not, but I know that it's not going to be everybody's taste, and I really recognize all of those things that could have been done a bit differently, especially the case with Iron Fist. I just can't forgive that he just didn't get what he deserved, honestly. He wasn't a bad character. He isn't. He's a kind of weird character. I understand why he did what he did in the beginning of the book, but what I don't get is why he didn't get any consequences in the last book. That's what he was affected mentally, but it wasn't shown. And that's what I don't like, because we should have at least seen him get a bit, maybe seen a bit more of his thoughts at the end. I just would have loved to see that a lot more than what we actually got, because especially with Gavin and Iron Fist, I feel like they should have gotten a much different ending than they did. Maybe they should have gotten something like Kip's ending. Maybe Kip should have gotten what Gavin got, and Gavin should have gotten Kip's ending. It was just so not what I would have done, and even though I like it, I don't love it, and that's why I gave the book 4 stars, because the last book, just because I get it, but I don't at the same time. I would have done it differently, and I know that many people wouldn't really like it because of just how well kind of it ended, especially for the last few pages with all of that battles and stuff. Like, yeah, so yeah, that's basically it from me. As I was talking about this, I thought of something and I completely forgot what it was. So I've probably forgotten to say many things about this, which is kind of like a thing for me. I always forget to say the most important thing. But anyway, I have all of my reviews linked down below, so if you wanna, you can check them out. And if you like this video, like it, subscribe, and stay tuned for new videos. So yeah, see you next time. Bye guys.